Buy Black Podcast, Episode 6. Mike de Los Santos, social justice warrior by day, barbecue sauce and dry rub guru by night.
Throw some D's on that. Throw some D's on that beer.
Welcome to Buy Black, the only podcast dedicated to helping you find, connect with, and support Black-owned businesses. We're on a mission to bring consumers and business owners together to ignite the global Black economy. I'm your host, Gerald Jones, and if you're a Black business owner or a socially conscious consumer, you've joined the right community. Ready? Let's get to work. Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another great episode of Buy Black. Before I talk to you about my guest for today, I want to hit a couple of housekeeping points. The first thing, our downloads. Downloads have doubled, more than doubled, in August over what we had in July, and I owe that all to you guys out there listening every single week, telling your friends. Continue to do that for me. I really appreciate it. The next thing, my contact info. So I've been putting my contact info for you guys to be able to reach out to me down at the bottom of the episode description for these shows. I'm going to move and change that around. So if you're on your podcast player and you look into the section for description for this episode and every episode going forward, you should be able to immediately see my email address and my phone number if you want to reach out to me about your business, about setting up a business, or if you have another business owner that you feel like should be featured on the show. So most podcast players, if you click on either that email or that phone number, it should be linkable where you can just make a call to me or shoot me an email directly from your phone while a podcast is going on. So please take advantage of that. The next thing is the share button. Same thing right there on your podcast player. There is a share button. If you can just do me a favor real quick as we're getting started, just click on one of those share buttons, whether it's with your Facebook, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, whichever one of your accounts you typically spend the most time on. Share this episode with a friend or somebody who needs it. It really helps me to spread this message to more people. And then also the more shares, I don't know exactly how the algorithms work, but the more shares, the more people who are linking to this, the higher we're going to get ranked in Google, in iTunes, and it's just going to help us get more exposure to more people. So do me that quick favor, click that share button, tag me in it. It's at Buy Black Podcast on your Facebook or your Twitter. And then the final thing is I'm looking for some feedback from you guys after this episode. I've been noticing, at least for me personally, that I feel a lot more comfortable in these shows when I'm less trying to do an interview and keep it all structured and more just having a conversation. And I kind of think I'm going to be going that direction with this show going forward. But that's just, data point of one. That's how I feel. I would love to get your feedback on the format. Tell me how you feel about the episodes that are a little bit more structured as opposed to the ones where we just get into a conversation and let it go. And also let me know what you think about those shows where it's just me and I'm tossing a little bit of information to you that can help you start your business. I would love to get your feedback on that and let me know what direction you would like to see the show going, because ultimately I'm here for you to help you guys connect. And so whatever it is that I can do to help it connect better, I'd love for you to let me know. Now, with all that out the way, my guest today, I'm really excited about it. His name is Mike de Los Santos. He goes by Mike D. Now, we've got Labor Day coming up next week. This is the perfect time for you to connect with Mike. Mike owns a company called Mike D's Barbecue Sauce that he started a few years ago in 2013, 2014. And today he's on the show with us. He's going to be talking about his day job, which is as a social justice activist. And he's going to be talking about his personal business, Mike D's Barbecue. And there is nothing but gold that he's sharing with us this entire time. Everything from getting into the supermarkets to getting into locations with new vendors to even registering a business that deals with food and health and sanitation with local governments. This could all be absolutely useful information for you if you're out there thinking about getting into that market. As well, we just kind of spend a lot of time talking about the current events that are going on today. It's a great conversation. I'm going to let it run in its entirety from the time that we hopped on the phone all the way until after I had planned to finish the recording. because I feel like it's just a great conversation. And again, I'm looking for your feedback on that. If you want to see a little bit more editing of the show, if you want to skip those pieces, let me know and I can go back to that. But so far, these great conversations that I've been having with people shouldn't just stay with me. And there's a lot of stuff I was editing out before that I really think could be valuable going forward. So let me know. And with that, we're going to jump right into the conversation with Mike.
How's it going, Gerald?
Hey, everything's good, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Awesome. Wow. I saw your video post from yesterday. How are things going out there?
They're good. I mean, they sort of showed their true coward selves and didn't really show once they saw about 400 people show up in 30 minutes to oppose them. They left pretty quickly.
What was it? What was going on? Like, I don't watch the news, so I don't know anything that's going on unless Facebook tells me. But I just saw your live video and I saw the demonstration going, and I was like, wow, there's something going on in North Carolina.
Yeah, so earlier this week, some activists pulled down a Confederate statue that's in front of the courthouse downtown. Because a few years ago, the state legislature passed a law that made it illegal for local government to make a decision about removing statues. So some young activists took it into their own hands and yanked it down. And KKK folks have been upset that the prosecution of these folks has gone slow. So they threatened to show up in full KKK uniform and march through the streets on Friday. So when word started to spread about that, folks started to show up to oppose them. And they ended up sort of seeing the crowd of folks that showed up. They ended up leaving, and only a couple of their folks stuck around to try to apply for a permit to march later in the day, which they never got. And so there was this ongoing threat of them coming back. Just crowds of people just stayed in front of the courthouse waiting for them to come back, and they never did. So
that's crazy. It's wild, man. I don't know what's going on right now, but it's craziness. So did this happen before or after the rally in Virginia? Did they pull down the statue before or after that?
After that.
Okay.
So there'd been discussions, like people have been sort of upset about all these statues for a while here, which is why the state legislature passed that law 2 years ago to try to protect the statues. And so after Charlottesville, some of the younger activists had just had enough and just went and pulled it down.
See, that's crazy to me in and of itself. So the state basically came in and was like, hey, you local governments that are supposed to, respond to the people right there, y'all don't have any power to make decisions for the people right there. So we just going to protect these statues because we think y'all are going to do something that we don't want you to do.
Pretty much.
How long ago was that?
They did that in 2015.
Wow.
So it's just sort of been bubbling for a while, and some young folks just went and took it down, which has led, so Duke had a statue of Robert E. Lee right outside of their chapel, and in light of this week's events, the president of Duke got the approval from the Board of Trustees to take that Robert E. Lee statue at Duke was removed. And now there's pressure on UNC to do the same thing for a statue they have in the middle of their campus called Silent Sam. And that's going to be a little harder because that's, Duke's a private university. UNC is a state university. So it's going to be harder for them to just take it down like Duke did. But, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So that's backwards to me, though. Like, I know it makes sense the way that things actually work, but the place that people's tax dollars pay for is the place where it's going to be harder to get rid of these statues that basically, crap on the people who are paying tax dollars for the school to be there, as opposed to a privately funded school who could basically do whatever they want, and they're quicker to move and say, we want to respond to what this community wants, what our students want, than a school that's paid for by the people. Like this is all just kind of wild to me, but I like it. I like this going that direction as far as like, I can't say I'm always, in fact, I can definitely say I'm not about doing things the illegal way and just going and snatching stuff down, but I'm happy to see when people go through the right channels and get these folks to make the decisions and take them down, because I mean, it needs to happen. It needs to happen like yesterday.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the good things that came out of them yanking that statue down was then the governor was forced to make a statement, and he has now made a statement that he wants the state legislature to overturn their previous law, so that we can get all these statues taken down, so they can stop being rallying points for KKK folks.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. And you know what? That's the other thing, is none of this stuff ever actually happens until somebody stops following the rules and just says, I'm going to do what's right. So hold on.
That one person to group of bad. Hold on. I'm gonna step aside of this unjust law.
Hold on one second. I keep losing internet connection. Is that happening to you too?
It's not.
Okay, I'm sorry. So what were you saying? I missed like half of that.
Oh, no, I was just saying, yeah, it's just like it takes sometimes, folks to say we got to step outside of an unjust law to get things moving.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to say I'm on the fence about that, because I understand it and it has to happen. And it's like, I guess the only thing I can say is that would not ever be me. Like, I'm not going to crap on anybody who says this is what's right, so I'm going to go ahead and do what's right now, and I'm going to suffer the consequences, because we need those people, and those are the ones who actually make change happen immediately. That's just not me, I guess. I'm more the guy who's going to look and say, what are all the avenues I can take to try to kind of circumvent this game, or try to change the way the game is played in order to make stuff happen, as opposed to just saying, forget your rules. But those are typically the people who make stuff happen very quickly. So I can't be mad at it.
Yeah. I mean, we all got to sort of fit into our spaces. Some folks are comfortable stepping outside of the rules. Some folks aren't. But like, everybody plays a role in sort of fighting injustice. So.
Yeah. Which is kind of why, that's why we're here right now too. So I had a plan to talk about this stuff later on in our conversation, because I know, we're coming together to talk about your company. And I guess what I had laid out here was that I was just going to try to hit you up about, your backstory and what it is that kind of led you into this barbecue game, and anything about like the company and any competitions you've been in, stuff promoting the actual product. And then I was going to kind of move over and just ask you about, the business itself, how you have the whole business structured, what all the things are that you offer. And then after talking about you and talking about the business, I was kind of going to roll into that thing that you are passionate about, the social activism, the leadership in Black entrepreneurship, and have that conversation, which I figured would bring us to the rally, but we started off with it. And then finally, contact information and everything. But from you, like, do you have anything in particular that you want to accomplish through this interview? Do you have any, promotions coming up, or is there a certain type of marketing that you're wanting to do to get out to people that we can focus on today?
Not in particular. I mean, really it's just about sort of just talking to folks and getting the awareness out there that, we exist and we've got good barbecue. Okay,
cool. Well, then let's just have a conversation. And what I'll do is when I go back to produce the episode, then I'll record the whole, hey, I'm talking to Mike, and all your background and accolades and everything like that. And I'll just kind of splice that in at the beginning. But just based on the way we started this conversation, I'm probably just going to use it all. So why don't we just go ahead and jump straight into it, and I'll hand it over to you, and you can just start talking about, your story. What is it that led you here? How did you become Mike D with the barbecue sauce?
Yeah, so we've been in Mike D's Barbecue. We've been in business since 2013, but so the barbecue journey started much earlier than that. So I've always been a barbecue junkie. Like barbecue has always been one of my favorite things. Started back growing up when I was growing up in Richmond, Virginia, which is not a hotbed of good barbecue. At least it wasn't when I was growing up. And so North Carolina barbecue is really what I was introduced to. You know, folks would take every so often would take a 2-hour drive down to Roanoke Rapids to go to a place called Ralph's Barbecue. And that was really what gave me the introduction to what amazing barbecue was. And so then when I moved to North Carolina back in 2007, I just really started to get into barbecue. So I started out with a barbecue blog where I would just talk about barbecue, and as I would travel around the state for work or even outside of the state for work, I would find barbecue restaurants near where I was, and I would go and eat there and review them. And that turned into some sauce companies started reading the blog and started wanting me to review sauces as well, to get is cross promotion to get a blogger to rate their barbecue sauces. So I ended up getting like a cabinet full of barbecue sauces. Some were great, some weren't so great, some were just flat out terrible. And then like all this is going on, like I host a huge Memorial Day cookout every year at my house, sometimes up to 70 people. And so I was always making up different sauces for folks to try instead of having store-bought sauces. And so like I was doing all this while reviewing all these other sauces. And folks were always like, Mike, your sauce is better than the sauces that we're buying in the store, or these sauces that people keep sending you that you're letting us sample. Like you should go into business. And I was always hesitant to do that because one, this is the South and the barbecue sauce market is really flooded. So everybody in the South thinks they have the best sauce in the world. And everybody tries to have a sauce business. So I knew, and that's just, with small businesses. You also then have the major companies, Heinz and the other folks who make sauces who are, market heavily in the South. So I was always hesitant to do it because I didn't really want to step out of the norm. But then sort of stuff started to shift for me in 2011 and 2012 when my wife was pregnant with a son, and we found out that he had a heart condition called hypoplastic left heart syndrome, where essentially he was born with only half his heart working. So we used emergency surgery to be born. He was whisked away to surgery right away. And then we essentially lived in the hospital for like the next 6 months because he was in the hospital all that time except for a short 3-week period at the beginning of 2012 where he got to come home for a little bit. But like just sort of like watching my son as he like always like fought through all these heart surgeries. So he had a total of like 6 surgeries in that 6-month period, and 3 of them were on his heart, which when you're a baby of that size, your heart's like the size of a strawberry.
Right.
So it's really risky, but he just, he kept fighting. He kept fighting along until he couldn't fight anymore. And he actually died of not from his heart condition, but some other complications from all the surgeries that he had. Right. His lungs just couldn't develop and breathe on his own, and he ended up getting blood clots and stuff. And so just after he passed, just sort of, I was in sort of lost for a little bit trying to find my space, but then I kept reflecting on like how my son had always fought, like, and as a 6-month-old baby, like he couldn't make excuses on why he shouldn't do something. All he had to do was just try to fight to live. And if he could do that without really grasping what it meant to like not quit on something, to not take chances, but to just fight, then there's as a grown man who understands sort of what it means to quit and not quit, shouldn't make excuses about what I can and can't do. And so I had sort of vowed, in his honor that I would not find excuses to do things that I really wanted to do. And so with that, 2013 started the business. And so that's sort of the background of how I then went from just having backyard cookouts and stuff to becoming, Mike D with the barbecue sauce.
Yeah, man, that kind of experience, one, I'm very sorry for your loss. That kind of experience definitely leaves an indelible mark on your character. I mean, I don't talk about this much, and I don't know if my wife will be happy about me putting it out on the podcast, but I understand your experience. Our second child together actually came at 20 and a half weeks. She wasn't quite 21 weeks. And, she was born alive, but she stayed with us for a night and she passed. And I mean, it's one of those very, very powerful things that you go through that you hope nobody else ever has to go through. But that child never leaves you. And even though you don't spend a lot of time with them, they change you into something stronger. So I commend you for seeing that fight in your son and then, taking action on that. It's just, it's a very powerful thing. I'm sorry to hear that, but, so that brought you to starting the business. So how has the business developed? So you decided to start it. I know me, I'm brand new to this entrepreneurship world. I've been doing it now for about 8 months in some capacity or another. And the only thing that I am consistent with is that I make mistakes. So, tell me, how'd you get started? How did you grow the business? What are some of the lessons you learned, making this thing what it is now?
Yeah. So, when I started, I had no idea what I was supposed to do. So I was doing a lot of digging online, trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do to start a business that, was, a legal business that wasn't there'd be no reason for somebody to come at me saying I was doing something that I shouldn't be doing with the company. So, and what I ended up doing, and this is probably something I wouldn't do if I was going back and doing it again, is I just went through LegalZoom to file all of the paperwork and stuff and used them as my registered agent. And so it cost more. I found out that it cost more to do that than it did if I had just went to some small business attorneys who are helpful in getting small businesses started, that I probably could have saved a little money doing it that way, or even filing some of the forms myself, because it's not as complicated as folks sort of make you think it's going to be. So it was once I got all that done, then it was just a matter of trying to figure out how to get a product to market. And in the food industry, that's really challenging because, there's lots of regulation about, how food is prepared, where it's prepared at. And so for me, I didn't want to initially start out going to a larger place that would produce it for me in quantity. I wanted to be able to produce it myself. And so, because I just didn't really trust giving my recipe to somebody and all that involved in that. So I wanted to start out being a home-based home kitchen business with my sauces and seasoning mixes or dry rubs. So I had to sort of figure out the process for that, which in North Carolina, you have to have your home kitchen certified by the Department of Agriculture. And so for us, that's challenging because at the time, they only had 2 staffers responsible for the whole state. Each person was responsible for 50 counties, and they each only worked part-time. So getting on their schedule to come and certify your home kitchen is, a very long process. I got lucky where they called me and said, hey, we were supposed to be in your area 2 days from now, but that person canceled. So I had this opening. Do you want to jump on that opening or wait till we had you scheduled later in the year? So I quickly jumped on and said, no, come now. I don't want to wait.
That's a crazy question, right? It's like, oh, no, man, please come in a few months. I don't need you right now.
Right. So I was like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. Come over. And so we got that done. And so then my home kitchen was certified, and then I could start sort of taking the next steps, which is then getting your food tested to sort of see where it fits. So with dry rubs, it's not really tested. You just have to send your ingredient list to a lab that's associated with the Department of Agriculture, which for here is done through NC State, where they take your ingredient list for your dry rubs and they develop your nutritional label, because all food product labels have to have their nutritional values on them. And so then once I got that from them, I could start preparing and packaging and bottling up my dry rubs for sale. The sauce was a little more challenging because you have to like make samples, send it to the lab to get tested to see if it's an acid food or an acidified food, and depending on where it falls, it changes the process that you have to go through to get it completed. So the sauces were determined that they're an acidified food, which meant that they had a higher probability of being able to develop bacteria if you were going to try to make them shelf stable. So in order to be able to produce an acidified food from your home kitchen, you had to go through an additional certification class and then buy a bunch of equipment, because then every time you made a batch, you had to make these tests and complete these logs to send to the FDA. The challenge there was that they didn't have like a regular schedule of when these classes were going to be offered. So when I reached out and I said, I just found out I need this course, like, when is it going to be available? And I said, oh, we just had one last week and we don't know when we're going to have another one. So that sort of put me in a bind. So I was already selling dry rubs just through word of mouth. I had been posting on Facebook and stuff and social media about it. So I started selling the rubs. We had some revenue coming in, but like the heart of the company is barbecue sauces. So I needed to figure that out. And so I was sort of forced to take the second option, which is finding a co-packer or a plant that could produce the sauces for me, which, is not what I had wanted to do originally, but I was kind of forced into it because otherwise it would have taken me, almost another year to get the sauces to market. And so found a good company through some recommendations from folks. They were really good folks. It's a place called Bobby's Bottling. It's just in a small town in North Carolina, about 30 minutes from where I live. And we sort of went through the process with them. They signed all the contracts about confidentiality, worked with their food scientists about taking my recipe and scaling it up to size to be able to produce it in larger batches. And then, the good thing about that is that they do all the reporting to the FDA for you. So I don't have to buy equipment. I don't have to get certified. It makes that part of it a little bit easier. The challenge with that is you got to buy it in bulk up front. So like you had to buy, instead of me making small batches and selling them as I make them, your first batch that you order for them, you have to buy 75 gallons worth. And then once you go through that, you have to buy it in 150 gallon batches. You got to pay for it when you pick it up. So it puts a little more crunch on you from a capital perspective.
Yeah. But it's almost like this forces you to scale. Like if you're going to actually go through this whole process to do it in your home kitchen, you're already putting so much money into it that you might as well just devote that money to product, scale it, and get another person to make it and bottle it for you.
Exactly. And so we decided that, talked with some friends and my wife, and we're like, look, it's going to be a slightly higher cost, but if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right and eat that cost and not have to deal with the pressure of keeping these logs and reporting directly to the FDA. So we did a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo to help raise some initial startup money to help us deal with the cost of getting our first production run done. And so, we were able to start selling our sauces in July, at the end of July of 2014. So, we officially became a business in December of 2013. We started selling our dry rubs in March of 2013, and then started selling our first sauce, which we called Big Sauce, in end of July of 2014. And we were still able to hit our sales goal for year one, despite not getting our major product out until the tail end of the year. And part of it was the crowdfunding had sort of raised awareness of what I was trying to do. And then we had a decent amount of support from friends and family and our networks that, we were able to initially start making some good sales right out the gate. And then, heading into the second full year in 2015 is when we figured that, just solely trying to sell stuff through word of mouth wasn't going to work, right? You're going to get that, but like you had to start reaching outside of your networks. And a couple of small business folks I know suggested that I start finding little pop-up markets to set up booths at and to start selling products. So in 2015, we started sort of expanding outside of just online and word of mouth to these vendor markets and larger events. And that's when it really started to take off, because then you're getting directly in front of consumers who are passionate about buying local, because they're going to these local markets that are full of just local vendors stepping up. And so we were able to start building, following. Our social media started to grow, our sales continued to grow, and then we started getting into more and more markets. And so it turned into, more and more of my weekends was going to setting up events on Saturday and Sunday, sort of pushing the product. So we had, a good sales growth in 2015. Heading into 2016, we needed to scale that up even more and stop doing some of the smaller markets and started getting into some bigger markets and trying to enter into some competitions to just raise the awareness about it some more. So 2016 sort of really things started to kick up for us as we got into some bigger markets and started traveling around the state more than just focusing on Raleigh and Durham. And things have been sort of just growing pretty crazy since then, to kind of where we are now. So 2016, as that started to scale up, that allowed us to, launch 2 more products. So we launched spicy versions of both our dry rub and our sauce, and have started to pick up some retail stores, in addition to growing online and growing our market and vendor presence. So things have just been steadily growing since then.
Very cool. Very cool. So I want to go backwards real quick. So first of all, you said that you did a crowdfunder on Indiegogo. What was that experience like? I think I've had one other person on the show, Daniel Baraha, when he was talking about his shoe company. He did his first round of fundraising on Indiegogo and got pretty close to his goal. How was it for you, and how did you market that in order to get people to donate?
Yeah, so we did okay. We didn't do great. And part of the reason why we did Indiegogo instead of Kickstarter is I knew that it was going to be challenging to sort of hit our funding goal. And on Kickstarter, if you don't hit your goal, you don't get any of the money. On Indiegogo, if you don't hit your goal, you still get the money that you raised. They just take a slightly higher fee. And for me, that worked better because whatever money I was able to raise would help to offset the cost of what I had to put in myself. And I figured that higher percentage they took was sort of worth having that additional funds available to help start and grow the business. So,
right.
But then setting it up, I really didn't know what I was doing. And then, in hindsight, I learned a lot of lessons. You can't just have it takes great photos and great video on your page. You got to be really active on pushing it on social media, and sending emails out to if you have an email list, sending it out to your contacts, and hitting folks. You got to be somewhat annoying. I hit folks more than one time. Hit them 2 or 3 times to get them to come through.
If you had to, let me ask this: if you had to go back now, knowing what you know now, if you had to go back and redo a crowdfunding campaign, what are the 3 key things that you would tell somebody that they needed to do?
The first one I would say is to create a really good video to go at the top of your campaign, because videos pull people in. And if you make a really good video, you can pull on folks' heartstrings, or you can sort of just really sell how great you are. And it's easier to do that in video than it is in photo. So number 1 would be create a good video. Number 2 would be realistic with the perks or the things that you're going to give folks in exchange for them making a contribution. Don't go too hard. I probably overcommitted the amount of stuff people could get for their contribution. And so that cut into what I could have raised, because I had so much of that was going to covering the perks, which is what they're called on Indiegogo, to folks who raise money. So number 2 would be realistic about the perks you're giving. Make sure that you're not giving the value, but you're giving out is not more than what that person is making for that level. And then 3, use email, not just social media. You can't just post on Facebook and Twitter with a link to that. You need to be emailing your contacts, and not people email everybody you know, like create an email list, sign up with something like MailChimp or one of these free email marketing systems, and send out emails and do it, not just one time and be like, I did it my one time, nobody committed, but send, 2 or 3 emails to folks. Like, get it, because, sometimes it takes getting in front of somebody 3 times before they say, okay, I'll do it. So those would probably be the 3 things. 1, video. 2, realistic with your perks. And 3, make sure email is a big part of your outreach campaign.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with those. Especially the email part. I haven't ever realized how important that piece is, but like all the other podcasts I listen to, the online marketing podcasts, so many people say that that is the most undervalued thing that people get into. Like you said that you were blogging before, and we'll definitely get back to that. But, people build blogs, they'll build these web pages, they'll start getting people who are coming back every single week, and they wait like 2 or 3 years before they start building an email list. And that email list is, that is your targeted, marketing audience. Like instead of throwing things out to the world and saying, I wonder if anybody out there who's never heard of me might want to buy something, you literally have a list of people that's, 200, 500, 5,000 strong that you can say, you already know me, you already like me, buy this thing from me. So yeah, I think that the email list piece is probably one of the strongest ones. I think a lot of people would say, before you ever start trying to market or pay for advertising out there in the world, you need to start collecting people who are in your audience and get their email. So the other question I had about what you just said was the vendor markets. So you said you started those local. Like, how do you get into those? Do you just kind of walk in and be like, hey, I got some barbecue sauce to sell, so where can I set up? Like, how do you break into that?
So yes, essentially his answer is yes to that. I was lucky in that some folks I know who had some artisan brands that they did with clothing and stuff suggested some markets to me, and then I was able to just reach out to those folks, send like a quick email to the folks who ran those markets and say, hey, I've got this barbecue business, I'd love to set up at your next event, and they did that. But if you don't have folks who can refer you like that, the best thing to do is to just these markets happen whether all over town, in everybody's town. It's spend a day going around your town reading the local ads about what's going on in your city, and then go and find these little markets that pop up. Sometimes there are breweries, sometimes it's farmers markets, and just sort of figure out who's running it and introduce yourself and talk to them. So much when you're starting out as a business is networking. It's going to places, saying who you are, and you'd like to be involved in whatever they're trying to do. And folks will start adding you to the list to get notified when they've got events coming up where they need folks to set up and sell products.
Cool beans. That sounds really awesome. So how then do you go from your local markets? You said that you then expanded out to other markets. Is that just a word of mouth thing? Like, hey, this guy's doing really well at the local markets, so, let him into your market? Or did you go out and reach out to them? And what are some of the other markets that you were able to move into?
Yeah, so it's a mixture of both of those. So some of the larger markets, they send people out to smaller markets to find people. So sometimes I'd be at a smaller event and somebody would come up to me and say, hey, we're doing a big show, 2 months from now. We're looking for more local small businesses to be there. Can we add you to the list? And so I was of course, add me to the list. And then and some of it is folks who run markets that you've been at smaller markets are connected to the larger markets, and they refer you to these larger markets who then reach out to you. And some of it is you just sort of figure out who has access to bigger markets and how can you get into it. So for me, the first step was through our Department of Agriculture, we have a program called Got to Be NC, which is meant to uplift small food and agricultural businesses in North Carolina. And so it's a membership program you sign up for, and then you get access to information about events that you didn't know about that as a member of Got to Be NC, you get discounts to. So then they have their own event. So every year in May, they have the Got to Be NC Festival at the fairgrounds, which is like a mini state fair. It's 3 days. There's lots of things outside. And then members, there's a building that members can set up in, and for 3 days you've got thousands of people coming through, sampling and buying products. And that sort of gives you a big boost, because then you've got folks who got your card, who've tasted your product, who bought some, who then start ordering from you later on because they need to get more of what you sold them at that big festival. And then through that membership, I was able to get discounts to booths at larger markets. So then, like, there's a town here called Kenston that has the barbecue festival on the Neuse every year. The Neuse River runs right through that town, and that festival hosts the second largest whole hog competition in the country outside of Memphis in May. So it's a big deal. And then as a member of Got to BNC, I got a discounted vendor fee to be able to be there and sell products. And so then it just start using these larger networks to find and get into these bigger shows. And then as you meet companies at these bigger shows, you can then talk to them. Hey, what big shows do you do outside of this one? And they typically will help you and sort of recommend larger shows for you to be able to get into. So I've done bigger festivals at different cities just through Got to BNC and getting some referrals. And then the big Got to BNC festival that they do every year is great. And so as part of that, like, for example, the Bluegrass Festival, like the International Bluegrass Festival, happens in downtown Raleigh every year. And then I've been able to set up and sell products at that just through being part of Got to BNC. So like that was a big key in getting into some of the larger markets.
I like it. And then you mentioned a couple competitions that you've had over, I guess, the last year or two. So what kind of wins you got? How do we know that Mike D's barbecue is actually bringing it?
Yeah, so the first competition we ever entered was in 2016. It was the World Hot Sauce and Extreme Food Awards. And we entered our sweet and spicy dry rub into one of the dry rub categories. I regret I should have entered it into every dry rub category. But I entered it into the fowl category. So it was like duck and chicken and stuff like that. And there were 16 countries that had products represented. So companies from 16 different countries had submitted entries, and our sweet and spicy rub finished second in the world in the fowl category. Wow. And that was sort of our first big win. And the thing was hosted in Louisiana, but since it's a worldwide competition, they live streamed their award. So it was pretty cool sort of sitting there. I had pulled the live stream up on my big TV, and I was hanging out in the living room, and then hearing your name called was, a pretty rewarding feeling, just to like, second place, sweet and spicy dry rub, Mike D's Barbecue, Durham, North Carolina. And it's like, wow. Like you feel really happy.
Yeah, man. Congratulations. That's awesome. So where'd you go after that?
So the next competition that we won actually happened this year. We were down in Kinston at the barbecue festival on the Neuse, where they have what's called the Sauce Boss competition, where sauces get entered mostly from from teams who are competing in the whole hog competition. And they have it split into, the professional division and the backyard division for the amateur folks who wanted to submit products. And then they have People's Choice and judges. So there's a tent that's set up where Sam Jones, who's really famous in the barbecue world, he comes and he smokes a bunch of meat, and the people who attend the festival can go in, use that meat to sample sauces and vote on who they think is the best. And then they have a panel of judges who judge and do that. And then, so we entered both our big sauce, which is a milder sauce, and our spicy barbecue sauce into that competition. And we won People's Choice. So I got a big old trophy for winning People's Choice. And then we also got second from the judges with our spicy barbecue sauce. And that sort of looked upon good, because especially in Eastern North Carolina, they love their barbecue sauce and their barbecue. And if you can win People's Choice in that, it sort of, especially in this state, it gives you sort of a stamp of approval that you know what you're doing. So those are the big wins that we've gotten on the competition side so far.
That's cool, man. Because I honestly, when I look at that, I'd say, okay, well, which one of these, kind of foodie judges, people who may not be looking at it from a standpoint of which one do I want to actually put on my barbecue. They're looking at it from a technical standpoint versus the people just saying, this is the one I would buy. It's like, I'm winning. If I win that award, I think that means a lot more than winning the judges award. But then on the technical side, you also got second on that. It's just like the people like the taste of this one the best. And technically, I have one of the best barbecue sauces out here. So I was going to ask other questions, but with all that put out there, tell me, where can people go and buy this stuff from you? So how do people make their orders of Mike D's special barbecue sauce and rubs?
Yeah, so the easiest thing to do is go to MikeDsBarbecue.com. So that's Mike, MikeDsBBQ.com. That's really the easiest way to do it. So you can order there. We do flat rate shipping to anywhere in the U.S. So no matter how much you order, you're going to pay $2.50 for shipping. And we do all priority mail shipping. So it gets to you in 2 to 3 days, depending on, where you are. That's really the best way to do it. There's a section on the website that if you happen to be in North Carolina, you can pull up an interactive map to see what retail stores that it's in. We're lucky enough to be in a handful of retail outlets in North Carolina and one in Pennsylvania in a really small town in the mountains. So that's really the best way to do it. And so far we've shipped to 31 of the 50 states plus DC. And we've also shipped some product to South Korea. So we've, through the website, have been shipping stuff everywhere.
You must got some good stuff. I have not heard you yet say, however, the tagline. And I've been waiting on the tagline because I want to hear the tagline.
So our tagline is "Throw some D's on it."
I'm sorry, man. That's one of my favorite songs. Say it again.
Throw some D's on it.
How'd you come up with it?
Well, that song, "Throw Some D's on That," was a song that I like to jam to when it came out. But also it flows well. My name is Mike D and the company is Mike D's Barbecue. It flowed really well to say "Throw some D's on it."
Man, I can just see somebody like with a bunch of rub just listening to that song and tossing the rub on their baby rack ribs, rubbing it on in. Like I can see it in my head right now, man. That's marketing genius.
It's funny because it's that line like gets us. Even people who don't know about that song, when they hear the slogan, like they love it. At events all the time, people want to stop and take pictures of my banner. There's a few folks who have come up to the booth singing the song when they saw the banner. And then they realized that, there's slight word differences there, but they're like, hey, it still works. Let's roll with it.
Oh, yeah.
And then, so some folks are then from that show who first came to me because of the slogan have now like used the sauce on their YouTube shows where they do a lot of cooking. So the slogan's sort of really catchy and folks love it.
Very nice. Very nice. So that's one piece of marketing genius. And then I'm also sitting here looking at your website, and it looks like you got some advertising on NASCAR as well. So how did you get an advertising spot on a NASCAR car? Who's driving that?
So that was the number 39 car driven by Ryan Sieg out of Georgia. And he's in the Xfinity series, which is the series just below the top level. And so like it used to be called the Sprint Cup at the top level, and now it's called the Monster Energy Cup as the highest level where sort of all the most famous NASCAR drivers drive. And then the level right below that is the Xfinity series where folks sort of prove themselves that they can go up to the next level. And he races in the Xfinity series. And this season he did a couple races up at the top level too, but his folks reached out to me at the end of last year and said, we see you. We'd like to, work with you to get you on our car. And so we worked something out so that when they came to Charlotte, which is about 2 hours from me in Durham for a race, that I was able to work something out to get on their car for that race, which led to one of the one of the greatest experiences I've ever had, which is going to the track and sitting with I had never really been to a race, but then being on the car, you get access to the infield. I was sitting with the crew chief right above pit row, which is really, really exciting. But yeah, so Ryan Sieg, number 39, in the Xfinity level, in the Xfinity series, good guy. Sort of hung out with him for an hour before the race. And it was really fun. It was also eye-opening because I didn't realize how diverse pit row was until I actually got down there, and I saw how many African-American males are down there working on pit row. It was really a different experience than what folks assume about NASCAR.
Yeah. Tell us about it. I mean, we got some time. Tell us a little bit more about that experience. I personally, the only thing I know about NASCAR is Ricky Bobby. I did love that movie, but I've never really just sat down and watched, NASCAR, cars making left-hand turns all day long. Doesn't really do it for me, but I know it's a huge thing. So tell us more about that experience. What's it like?
So it is an amazing experience. So, so I get to the track and it's really fun because I have no idea where I'm going, but I have this access pass that pretty much allowed you to go anywhere, which was pretty cool. Whenever somebody was like, "Hey, I need to see your ticket," you can just wave this little big access thing that you had. They just wave you through everywhere you go. So that was a fun experience. But then just sort of being at the track, and I have my perceptions of what NASCAR is like, and then when I got down into the end, and when you're at the track and you're still on the outside, you see it, right? It's a sea of white folks, and I was a little uncomfortable because I went to college in the southwestern part of Virginia near the Bristol Motor Speedway, so I used to know the kind of folks who were hanging out and camping around the track, and it wasn't always folks who liked me very much. So I was a little nervous, but when I got down, especially to the track where the garage is, and I was trying to find, the hauler where his crew was hanging out, I kept seeing all these black faces, and I was like, where are all these folks coming from? And there was a ton of young, black males down there working on pit row. And as I talked to folks, I explained that because of how heavy those tires are and how quick you have to move on pit row, former college football players who don't make it to the NFL, this is a good career choice because they got that size, strength, and speed, so it works. And so there's a lot of young black males down there doing that. But the other thing for me, there was also a lot more women working down there than I anticipated, and so it was really eye opening just seeing all that diversity down on pit row, which is a little different than how diverse it is in the stands. But then, I was the same way. How exciting is it to watch cars drive in a circle for a couple hours? But when you're sitting there and the crew chief is right in front of you, and you can sort of hear the interaction with them and the driver, and you see these cars whipping past you at 170 miles an hour, it's really exciting. And then when you're right on top of pit row and you see them coming for their pit stop, and you're able to lean over and watch how quickly those guys move, changing tires, adding fuel, making adjustments. It's really impressive, and also sort of shows you how much of an athlete they really are. I know I used to think that these guys aren't athletes; they're just driving a car, but it is hot. It was 100 degrees that day in Charlotte, and it's even hotter than that in the car. And they've got these thick suits on, and they sweat off so much while they're doing that. It was really impressive from all standpoints, just being there watching it that close.
That's awesome. That's the kind of thing that, unless you experience it, you really just, all you stuck with is that stereotype. And then you go in and that's an incredible experience to have. I'm kind of curious now. I don't know if I'll ever get opportunity to be down at pit row, and I don't think I'd go up in the stands, but if I ever got a chance, yeah, I'm on that one. Very cool. So man, if it's all right with you, I want to switch gears a little bit, because when we talked before, we had this pretty long and in-depth and awesome conversation about Black entrepreneurship and the social activism that you've been involved in for a very long time. Just kind of what we started this call about, but I want to hear a lot more about that. So starting this business as a Black man, and then the things that you want to see in the community. Again, I'm just going to shut up and hand it over to you. What does this mean to you, and what is it that you're working towards?
Yeah, so for a long time, I've been like my career choice has been, being a social justice advocate. So I've done a lot of policy advocacy and done a lot of work with organizations that do organizing in Black communities, trying to help, build power. And part of that is just sort of seeing some economic justice, which is, it's no secret that in our Black communities, urban and rural, that there's wealth disparities, there's opportunity disparities, and I think part of that is like there's less access to stuff. But and I'm always sort of at meetings and stuff sort of talking about the need for access and like why that's important. But what I've also sort of figured that what's also important is like the need for examples. Like folks need to see examples. Like in these communities, like if they see other Black males and Black women starting businesses, like then it makes folks think they can do it too. So I figured, in addition to all the advocacy work that I do, that it's important for me to also sort of be like an example of folks that look, I as a Black man can start a business and be successful at it. And like we shouldn't use that as a barrier. Like while it's tough for Black businesses to get going, like there's no reason to not still try. Like there are people who do it. And so I just want to sort of lead by example by doing that. But where I also wanted to grow is like every dollar that's spent. So like there's this concept that when you spend money in small local businesses, that money gets circulated back into the community better than if you shop at a big box store. The same thing is said when you support, Black business. Like Black businesses are more likely to hire Black workers. They're more likely to support nonprofits and organizations that try to, work to uplift Black communities. And so when you're spending money at Black businesses, your dollar is more likely to go back into helping to uplift the Black community. And so as I grow the business, I want sort of for that to be the case. Like we already work with and make contributions to help some nonprofits that we know are doing some good work in Black communities. We also want to be able to grow it to where like we're hiring folks from communities too. Like we're hiring Black folks because we want, Black folks to have opportunity to be able to work for somebody who, understands our community, and our community's needs, and be an example for folks to say, look, I can start a business. Like I can do this too, as a way to start getting some economic change in our communities. And it starts by, one, having a business for Black folks to support, but then two, and reinvesting in your community, not just your business, but reinvesting back into the same communities that you're trying to uplift.
Absolutely. So you and I had this conversation, and I've had this conversation as well separately with a lot of other folks, especially since starting this podcast. And honestly, I've come up across a lot of objections and, I guess I wouldn't call them alternate opinions because it's really just the exact opposite from Black people who are, quick to try to tear Black businesses down or even get upset at folks who are saying, hey, buy Black, try to spend your money in Black businesses, try to support Black businesses. What kind of objections do you come across when you share this viewpoint with people?
It's interesting. It's like when I share this with people, I don't get a ton of objections from the people I'm sharing with. And that's probably just because I'm sharing it with people in my own sphere who have the same mindset as I do. Where I get the most pushback is like out at events. So when I'm at events selling products, the people I get the most pushback from are Black folks. And it's often comes in a couple forms. One, they don't believe that it's actually my product. They think I'm pushing somebody else's product. Like it's hard to believe that a Black man came up with a recipe for a product and they took it to production and they're out there doing it. And so folks, I'm always having to like re-explain, like, no, I'm Mike D. That's my name on the company. This is my company. This is my recipe. And it's not somebody else's, is one objection. And then two, I think just folks have been sort of conditioned to think that if something is not in every grocery store, that it's not legitimized. And I think part of that goes back to, folks finding legitimacy from white corporate America. And so, like, I'll see folks who say, oh, this tastes great. What stores can I buy it at? And I'm like, you can buy it from me right here. You're standing right in front of me. And I've just watched you buy from like 3 other vendors. So like, I know you're here buying stuff. You can buy from me right now. Like, oh, no. I want to buy this in the store. And so there's some, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there seems to be like a difficulty of saying, here, I can buy this here in the moment, and I don't need it to be at a store to legitimize it. Though even being in a store doesn't necessarily legitimize it either. I picked up a new grocery store this year in Durham, and I was at that store a couple weeks ago visiting it, just sort of checking on inventory levels, and there was some young black folks on the barbecue sauce aisle thinking about what barbecue sauce they were going to buy. And I said, hey, you should buy this one. You should try this one. Or if you like it spicy, you should buy this one. And I'm like, well, why should we buy those? Like, we're just going to get this one over here. And they said, we really like that one. We buy it all the time. And I was like, well, this one right here, this is my business. Like, I'm Mike D, and like, I put my name on a great product here. You should get this one. And they're like, yeah, well, we do want to support the black community, but this sauce here is from the black community. And I'm like, no, that one's actually not from the black community. That's not a black-owned company. That's a white-owned company. And they were still like, yeah, I think we're just going to stick with this one. And then, they referenced a couple other sauces on the shelf that they assumed were black-owned businesses because they're heavily marketed in the black community. But when I informed them that they weren't, they still felt that those, because they hadn't heard of my sauce yet, that it wasn't legitimate enough to purchase, even though they're standing there talking to the business owner. So there are some challenges in sort of getting folks into the buy black mentality from our own community, but I think it's still worth continuing to push that narrative because folks have been conditioned over the years on what makes a product legitimate. And oftentimes that wasn't black products. And so the more we push that mindset to folks, that's how we can start to change people's mentality and perspective towards buying from black businesses. I think one of the other critiques that we get is folks talk about, oh, I got terrible service from this black company, so I don't use them anymore. Well, you get terrible customer service from white companies too. Do you not use them anymore just because you got bad customer service? But you still shop there, right? Folks get mad because Walmart keeps 3 lines open and those lines extend way back. And so you're in line forever, but they still go there. But if they went to a black-owned store and they had one bad experience with somebody, they say, oh, I can't ever shop there again. But they're in Walmart every week. So I think, there is that mentality, but just the more we talk about it, the more we can show folks sort of the flaws in their viewpoint. We can start to get more people to come into the buy black and why buy black is good for the black community.
Yeah, it's a lot of education that has to come around. There's a couple things there. The marketing piece, I think that's one of the most frustrating things is that people assume because a product is marketed to the black community that there's a black person that's marketing it. But from what I've seen, usually if it's a black owned business and they're marketing to the black community, they're not using those stereotypes to market to the black community. But the ones that are using the most, extreme negative black stereotypes in their marketing to connect with black people tend to get black people to buy them, and they tend to not be black owned. But the assumption is just like, oh, well, this person is speaking to, this stereotype of me. And so they must know what they're talking about. It must be a black owned business, but they got nothing to do with black owned. They don't care about black people at all. It's their vision of what they think black people are. So that's what we're going to market to in order to get their dollars. Whereas if you come in with Mike D's barbecue sauce and all you're doing is marketing a great product with your name on it in a traditional way, if it didn't specifically, have some kind of caricature on the label, or if there's not some kind of thing that goes to the extreme side of what a black person is supposed to be interested in, well, then it must not really be black owned, or it must not really be for them, which is a really unfortunate state that we're in with that.
Yeah, it's very frustrating because as an activist, I'm not going to do advertisement that plays upon stereotypes of my people. And so and that tends to hurt because you're right? The folks that do play up that stereotypes, they aren't black folks, but they're getting black folks money. And all I can say is that we just have to continue to push to educate folks and change that narrative. And I think especially now with all the stuff that's going on, we can, it's an opportunity to make a difference in that mindset people have.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what, and I plug it all the time because, This is my show, so I'm kind of, okay with plugging it. That's what this show, Buy Black Podcast, is all about, is talking to real Black business owners like Mike D and getting the perspective from a person who's been through it, who's made the mistakes and who's made the good decisions and has seen the outcomes from both, and getting that information out here. Like this specific show that we're doing right now is all about helping you guys connect with Mike D. Get out to his website, and that is www.mikedsbarbecue, that's bbq.com, and go and buy his product. Like, that is the ultimate goal of this episode. However, the reason why we're talking about all these other factors, and I'm asking all these questions about, how did you advertise? How did you market? How did you get in contact with these vendors? How did you get into bigger markets? That's all interesting stuff for me, because I want to be able to help grow my own businesses and I want to learn from it. But another huge part of it is that I know there's some of you who are out here in the market, or in the audience listening, who have thought about starting your own business before. You may have been thinking about it for years, and you may always come back to that point of, but man, it's just too much. I don't want to fail. What if I throw all my money into this thing and it goes nowhere? You know what? I'm just going to keep this job. A job is great for some people, but there are way more entrepreneurs in our Black community than we give ourselves credit for. And a lot of the things that are holding us back is just a lack of knowledge or a lack of confidence that we could do it. So the more that we hear all of what successful entrepreneurs like Mike are doing, and not just overall, hey, I started and now I'm a success, but the details, how did you do it? Who did you contact? Where did you get this information from? That's all learning points for somebody sitting out in the audience right now saying, but how do I start my own barbecue business? Oh, what are some of the hurdles I'm going to have to jump through in order to get approved by the FDA? Oh, this is great information. So that's what this show is all about, is getting past all of those barriers and starting to get people in a mindset of saying, you know what, I can do this, and I'm going to take the first step today. So if you're listening and you're on the fence, take that first step towards starting your Black-owned business so that I can interview you eventually. And if you don't know what that first step is, you can reach out to me. I'm at gjones@buyblackpodcast.com. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at buyblackpodcast, and I'm a consultant. That's what I do for a living. I would love to help you with those issues. And it ain't got nothing to do with money, because I just love helping people. So just reach out to me and we can talk. All right. Enough of that plug, Mike. Back to you. So what else is coming down the pike? So I know that, we had this, it wasn't even a rally yesterday, huh? You guys weren't planning on rallying at all. It was a response to the potential for KKK folks to come out there and rally. Yes.
There was not anything scheduled, but once word spread amongst the Durham community that the KKK folks wanted to march through our city in response to a Confederate statue being pulled down earlier in the week, the community responded, and within 30 minutes of really getting all the details, over 400 people showed up to the spot where the KKK was going to be at, and they left. Right when they saw that many people show up, that were hugely they were outnumbered by so much that they left, and they applied to get a permit for later in the day, but folks just stayed there for hours to sort of say that there's no place for white supremacy in our city, and so they ended up just leaving altogether. So yes, it wasn't a rally, but when you get a call to action to sort of push back on white supremacy, it's important to show up to push back.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw you put a post out yesterday about a permit. Like, people were saying they weren't coming out because y'all's group didn't have a permit, and you were giving some knowledge about kind of what ties into that, when you need a permit and when you don't, which I think is some useful information for folks as well. So what was that all about?
Yeah, so one thing, especially since Charlottesville and the man who's in the White House right now kept referencing, who had a permit, who didn't have a permit, and that sort of thing. It sort of, folks have been focused on that. And it's different in lots of places, but in general, the only time that you need a permit to march and rally is if you're going to be blocking the street and closing streets and marching down the street. If you're just going to be on the sidewalk, you don't need a permit. And so folks, don't need to be caught up in, is there a permit? Is there not a permit? Right? If you get a call to action to stand up for something, you should respond to that call to action, because the folks who are sort of behind the scenes on that aren't going to knowingly put you in a position to get arrested or to be in a bad spot. So, folks just don't get caught up in the whole permitting process, like show up, right? So there wasn't a permit for the rally that I was at yesterday, but because the police had...
My internet connection broke out for a second. You said there wasn't a permit, but the police had, and then you cut out for a little bit. Can you go back to that?
Yeah. So the police, in preparation for what they thought was going to be a KKK march, had already blocked off some streets because they didn't want what happened in Charlottesville with somebody driving a car into a crowd to happen. So those of us who wanted to push back on white supremacy, were able to show up to streets that were already closed off, so that we weren't in violation of anything because they were already closed off, and rally on the courthouse steps. But if it had gotten to the point where they were saying you got to get out the streets, then we could just move to the sidewalk on the courthouse steps and did the same thing, which is pushing back. So, folks don't get caught up in the whole permit game and who has one, who doesn't have one. When there's a call to action, it's important to show up.
Yeah, and so what networks do you connect with in order to either give out these calls to action or to get them? Is it all social media? Are there particular groups or avenues that you go through in order to send this information out or receive it?
So it's different in lots of places. So for me, I work for a nonprofit organization called Action NC, and we're involved in sort of fighting for social justice all the time. So through work, I'm engaged in a lot of networks in our community where when we get those call to actions, we can get them out to folks who are associated with our organization. And so it's sort of different in lots of places. But yeah, social media is really the place that it's easy to get the word out. So if you're not through work lucky enough to be connected to these folks where you can just get text messages, but if you are just in your community, pay attention to social media. That stuff happens. Pay attention to your local newspapers and your local news websites, because they sometimes give you advance warning that certain groups are planning on some sort of action. But I'd also encourage folks to just take a moment to sort of do some research in their community. Who are the groups that are fighting for social justice, and find ways to get connected with these folks, because that's how then you get into these networks to do that.
Okay. And I just pulled up, as you were talking, I pulled up the website. Would it be cool for me to ask you some questions about that? I know that we didn't, get on the call about Action NC. Do you think there would be an issue with discussing that on the show?
No, not at all.
Okay, cool. So I pulled up the website. It's www.actionnc.org. So tell me a little bit more about that. Is this something that you do part-time, or is it a half-time thing with your own business? And what types of work does Action NC do?
Yeah, so it's still my full-time job. I'm the deputy director at Action NC. I haven't moved full-time to barbecue just yet, but it's coming soon. But Action NC, in general, at its core, it's a grassroots organizing leadership development organization. So we organize in low wealth, underserved communities, helping to build empowerment and train folks in those communities on how to sort of step forward and take action. So we've got folks who are members of the organization who have, been trained on, press conferences and trained on how to talk with their elected leaders to push for improvements they want to see in their community. And then at the same time, engage them into the larger social justice fight. So we've done work on tenants' rights. We've done a lot of work on bank accountability, trying to hold banks accountable for their access to services and type of products they're offering our community, or their lack of access in our communities. We've done work on immigration, trying to fight for, good immigration reform. We've done a lot of work on healthcare, trying to fight to protect, quality healthcare for everybody. So like, our mission in general is, to make sure that everything is a fair, more just society for everybody. So we out there working in communities in low income, low wealth communities, just trying to help build community power.
Very nice. Very nice. And how long have you been with them?
So I've been back with them full time since 2014, but I actually helped found the organization back in 2010 while I was working somewhere else. I was one of the founding board members of Action NC. So I've been heavily involved with them since 2010 when they got started.
All right. Well, thanks, man. If you don't mind, I'm just gonna shout out the first part of the mission statement for your organization here. So it says, Action NC's mission is to confront and reduce the root causes of poverty, underdevelopment, and social and economic inequality through grassroots education, training, organization, and mobilization. And that is a phenomenal mission that I know that there are organizations all across the country who have similar missions that are out and working. And for those of you who are out here in the audience right now, if you're listening to this show, then I have to assume that you've heard the first episode. You understand what this show is about. It's about building economic power in the Black community and then using that in order to then wield political power so that we can actually start to gain equality for Black and brown people across this nation. That's really all it's all about. And that, I think, is the difference between, it's not even, I know. And I feel like it shouldn't even have to be said, but it's got to be said because for some reason, people, I don't say their names, feel like the folks on one side of this whole thing and the folks on the other side of this whole thing are just two sides of the same coin. But when you've got folks who are activists on one side who are fighting so that everybody who is not a white Christian male can have an equal voice at the table, and the people who are on the other side are fighting so that everybody who's not a white Christian male doesn't get to talk at all, you can't say that those are two sides of the same coin. And so if you are interested in trying to get our voices an equal weighting in this table, then look for organizations like Action NC that are working in your own community. Volunteer. Look at ways that you can actually go out there and start making a difference in the community. Because if we don't take action, I don't care whether it's action in the business and the profit world or in the nonprofit world, if you've got a mission and you're not taking action on it, then all you're doing is talking. And that is not helping anybody get anywhere. Sorry, Mike. I get on the soapbox sometimes, man, but
no, that's right. I'm just sitting here nodding my head. If there was a camera on me, it would have caught me just nodding my head in agreement to everything you were just saying.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just, and you know what? It's not about, like, there's no anger. There might be a little bit of frustration, but I think for me, I get more frustrated with our people than I do with the people who are actively working against our rights, because I know who they are, right? They know who they are. And at the very least, they're very honest about it. Like, I don't want you to have a voice. Thank you. I appreciate you, highlighting yourself. But it's our folks on our side who complain about not having a voice, but then also don't do anything to try to gain it, that really frustrate me a little bit.
Yeah, that can be very frustrating. And there's times where I get frustrated with that as well. But then I also like to sort of reflect back on the work that we do at Action NC, which is get into these communities that are often the most impacted by the folks who are trying to strip our voices away, and make sure that those folks know that they have a voice and help them fight for their voice to be heard. And then other folks will come along. Like, other of our people will see these communities taking up for themselves, and they will come along. Is how I see it. I know, just on my soapbox for a second, one of the things that folks talk about is this whole concept of Black on Black crime likes to come up all the time, and like Black folks talk about Black Lives Matter, but they're tearing their own communities apart. And I think one of the things that impressed me the most yesterday about Durham was the folks who came out. It wasn't just, white progressive liberal folks. It wasn't just folks who work in social justice, but it was the young Black males from the community who were coming up together to fight back against white supremacy. And so this whole, folks get caught up in these stereotypes, but like the young urban black male doesn't care about anything but his own self-interest. And it's just what I see in the community. I see that sometimes, but by and large, I see that that's not true. And these folks also just want to fight to have opportunities and want to just fight to have a voice and not and push back against oppression. And so I just think folks need to sort of step away from that mindset, understand that while there's bad in every community, there's also folks in these stereotypically bad communities who are fighting to make a difference.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. That same argument frustrates me, and it's always the reality of it is, and this is in any situation, is that I'm not going to come to you and tell you, hey, look at what I'm doing to help out my community without your help. Now give me some help. Like it never happens that way. I shouldn't have to come to you and say, look at everything that we are doing in order to help each other over here. Can you help me? I should just be able to come over and say, don't you see that we need help? Like, help us. Well, you're not doing anything for yourself. Look at how many of y'all killing each other. Wait, hold on. We got this. We're working on that. I need your help in this other thing. Because these guys wearing these uniforms, they're also killing us. You can help with that. We're working on this piece over here. Let's work together, right? But I shouldn't have to show you receipts on all the work that I'm doing inside my community in order for you to say, okay, well, I'll help you with the folks over here in my community that are hurting you. It's just, it's a non-argument, right? It's just an excuse to not help. So yeah, I feel you. So, I think like we've hit a lot of topics today. Let me bring it back full circle. So it's Mike D's barbecue. That was the point of our conversation. Even though we got off into the world of social activism, because I think we're both passionate about that. But I want to close it out with your contact info, because obviously you're a business owner, but you're also an activist, and anybody who's out here in this community who wants to reach out, connect with Mike on either one of those things, how are they going to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so two ways. One, if it's about barbecue or business, you can reach out to me at mike@mikedsbarbecue.com. And that's the best way to get to me about that. If you want to talk about social activism and stuff, the best way to reach me is at Michael, Michael, @actionnc.org. And that's sort of the social justice activism side of my life. And then you got the barbecue email. Of course, if you can just remember one of those two, you can still email me and I'll talk about this stuff. But those are the two best ways to reach me for the two different segments of what I do.
Awesome. And what about your social media spots? Where can they find you on there?
Yeah, so you can find me Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all at Mike D's Barbecue, all one word, MikeDSBBQ. And that's the same handle for all three of those main social media outlets. And you can find me, and we try to be very active.
Very cool. So then I just want to close it out with the question I ask at the end of every episode. We have given a lot of advice throughout this show, but we got to close it out with your number one piece of advice for this Buy Black community as a whole. It could be targeted at the entrepreneurs, the consumers, or both. It's all up to you. So what do you got?
Support Black businesses. Like, whether it's you starting one to get involved or you buying from Black businesses, that's the number one thing I say, because we're out here, we're struggling. We are, even with our successes, we're hitting barriers that need to be broken down. And we get that through support. So it's, support with your dollars, support with your time, get involved, start a business, like, do it. Just no excuses, just push forward. It's really the top thing for me.
Couldn't agree with you more, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you cutting out a lot of time on your Saturday afternoon. And we'll wrap it up and definitely stay in touch for future opportunities. Actually, honestly, this is what I want to do. I want to get in touch with you soon so we can have another episode that talks specifically about your blogging. Because I know last time we talked about that a lot more. And that's another avenue towards Black people going in and creating their own platforms and their own dollars that we haven't hit on this show. So would you be cool with that if we linked up at some point in the future to have a whole show just talking about how you developed and built your blog and how that led into this business?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool, man. All right. Well, hey, thanks for your time today, and we will catch you on the next show.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right, cool. All right, so that's where I'll stop the recording. Hey, Mike, thanks so much, man. You dropped all kinds of wonderful nuggets of gold throughout this.
No problem, man. I love talking about this stuff.
Awesome. So when I first started this show, I had this expectation that I was going to run these 30-minute episodes. It's going to be nice and tight and blah, blah, blah. And all the editing is really annoying, and it takes hours upon hours to try to get that stuff down. And it also makes it sound a lot less natural. So what I found is that my episodes end up going a lot longer now, and people are just going to have to, deal with the fact that they get more good stuff. So I'll probably use pretty much most of everything that we just talked about, and I'll just kind of clean up the audio and pull it together. I have an episode 5 is a guy that I went to school with, named Brandon Campbell. That's the one that I got coming out this week. That's like that's an hour and 45-minute show. So, we'll have that one coming out this coming week. And I may actually even split his up to where his is a Monday, Thursday. And then my plan is to put yours out there the very next week. Does that work for you to put yours out? That would be going into, they'll be going into the 28th of August. When is Labor Day?
Labor Day is that next weekend, that first weekend of September.
Okay. So so when I do my lead in to this episode with us, that's how I'm going to start it off. I'm going to talk about that Labor Day weekend is coming up. And if you want to have the best barbecue, you need to reach out to Mike D's Barbecue. So that's how I'm going to market this episode, if that's cool with you.
It sounds good to me.
Okay, perfect. All right.
I want to say I found you on iTunes, where I was able to subscribe to the podcast, not just try to find the internet links.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Have you, which episodes have you listened to so far?
I've listened to, I think, all of them except for the last one that came out. I just haven't had a chance to listen to it.
Okay.
But yeah, I was pumped when I figured out how to get the podcast.
How to do the subscription. So, all right. So honesty, man, what do you think about it? What can I be doing better? I feel like they're getting better each episode, but it's hard getting feedback.
Yeah, no, I love them, and I think that I do agree that they're getting better each time. I just think the more folks that you're able to talk to, the more voices you're able to get, the better it's going to get. But I do also like the ones where you're just giving out information, because like I wish when I was starting I had that kind of information. I think I would have made a lot less mistakes starting out if I had a podcast that just gave me information about what I need, what I don't need, kind of thing. So I think mixing in more of those with the interviews is gold.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to keep doing that. I like the interviews because I don't have to create all the content, but I do have a lot. I mean, I'm a performance consultant, so that's what I do for a living, is help, government organizations or businesses function better and save money and do things more efficiently. So I got all that stuff in my head and I want to share it. Earlier, when you mentioned going through LegalZoom to do your LLC, I thought that you had already listened to this most recent episode. So the most recent episode is 5 secrets you should know before paying another business to set up your LLC.
Yeah, no, I hadn't listened to that one yet. So
I thought about it. I was like, oh, so you listened to the latest show, huh? But I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to mention it. He's talking about this without me saying anything. So maybe maybe he's trying to plug the show, or maybe he's just being real. And so that's pretty funny. So you will like the latest episode. It's 5 secrets that you should know before paying another company to set up your LLC. Yeah. Helpful.
Yes.
But that's good. That's good feedback though. And I will continue to try to mix in the episodes that are just me with info. And then really, even with an episode that's an interview, I mean, if you start your own business, you've got knowledge that people can gain from. So that's where a lot of the extra questions I asked you came from, is that he's talking about this thing that I know other people are going to want or need to know. And so It just kind of ends up being your teaching moments.
Yeah.
But yeah, so looking forward to that blogging one. We'll hook up for that. And otherwise, man, I'm gonna let you enjoy the rest of your Saturday afternoon. I've got to go take a bunch of wood back to Lowe's so that I can get longer planks to build this fence around a garden in our backyard. So that's the rest of my day.
Good. That sounds fun. I was lazy today and said I'm gonna just play PlayStation and not go outside in the hot sun today.
I need to get on your schedule. I need to get that one going. Good stuff. Well, hey man, thanks Mike. And we'll stay in touch obviously on Facebook, but I'll hit you when I think it'd probably be a good time to get together and have that blogging conversation, because I know that's going to be gold.
Yeah, look forward to it.
All right, cool man. Enjoy your Saturday.
All right, you too.
All right, out. Thanks for tuning in to that great conversation that I had with Mike. I told you it was good, didn't I? So, just a reminder before I let you go, Mike's barbecue sauce. That's MikeD'sBBQ.com. Reach out to him. Get your barbecue sauce for the upcoming Labor Day weekend. There is no better time to try out a new barbecue sauce. Black-owned business. There's no excuses. So go ahead, head over to Mike D's Barbecue, support his business, and then, like I said before, reach out to me via social media. That's at Buy Black Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let me know what you thought about this mostly unedited format where we're just having a conversation. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you for being part of the Buy Black Podcast community. If you've enjoyed today's show, be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Join us next time for another empowering episode.